Hey everyone, welcome back to Shift Your Saturdays. This week, we're going to be talking about the very important mindset shift that everyone needs to take, and that is going from being an employee to a business owner. Now, if you're here, I need to ask you a hard question. You've been following the videos now for roughly 10 weeks, and we got to really cut to the brass tacks, right? At this point, you're creating content, you're getting clients, you're making sales, you're building something real. But the question I have to ask you is this: are you building a business or are you building yourself another job? And that's incredibly important because it's something that I see a lot with a lot of my individual clients and customers. Because what I see are people who are, so fed up with the 9 to 5, so fed up with the corporate life, BS, that they're like, I want to start my own business. They start developing something, trying to leave the proverbial prison behind. But what they find is that they just create something similar somewhere else. They say they hate their job. They say they create a business, but in reality, they're just creating a different job in a new place. And that's incredibly important because ultimately, if you're creating a new job, it becomes you become an issue. You become the bottleneck, right? There's this idea of working in your business versus working on your business. People who are working in their business, right? Doing all the fulfillment, answering the question, customer service, being literally the only person who can deliver, that's working in the business. And that is ultimately not a recipe for success when done long term. What you need to start focusing on and looking to do is working on your business, which means building the systems, creating the processes, making something ultimately that has value beyond your own personal labor. In this video, we're going to be talking about the two critical shifts that you need to be making. That is one from business employee to business owner, and the amount of time spent on working in your business to working on your business. Look, at this point, like I said before, you're doing what you need to do, right? You've either started that business, you're making money, you're putting your foot in front of the next to really start taking back and working for your time freedom. But you're probably still thinking like an employee. And I know that may sting a little bit, but that's okay because ultimately our financial system is so geared towards making people operate this way that it's really hard or it's really easy to not shift your thinking, right? It's really easy to stay involved in that 9 to 5 mentality. What we have to start doing is getting you out of this idea that you're trading hours for dollars, right? And this idea that you're waiting for someone to tell you what to do next. What you have got to figure out right now on is we've got to move from creating a job to building an asset. And here's the quick question for you, right? To help you identify if this is the case. Could you go on vacation for 2 weeks and your business would still operate? If your business would completely fall off, if you weren't there, you have a job. If the business itself would run with smoothly fulfillment and everyone in theory would be good, then congratulations, you have an asset. If you cannot take a 2 week vacation and have it continue to work, then we have got to focus then on working on your business versus working within your business. And again, this is incredibly important because if you want to build real wealth, it isn't about just making extra money. It's about becoming a different kind of person who builds assets and not jobs. Look, employees have income ceilings. Owners build assets. Employees are going to trade dollars for hours, and there's a ceiling, right? If you're getting an hourly rate and you're working Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, there's really only so much that you can do. Okay. And worse, it's requiring your time. It's requiring your constant presence. Whereas business owners are building assets that generate income without constant presence. Okay. And that's a big distinction that we want to focus on. The goal ultimately isn't you're not working yourself, and burning yourself out. It's that you're leveraging your time, right? It's that idea of working smarter versus working harder. And so that's what you want to start looking at within your business. How can I start working smarter versus how can I stop working harder? Okay. Ultimately, this gets down to what can you do in terms of business automation, right? If you're doing something functionally within your business twice, you should be automating it one time, right? When you're in the business, you're the technician. It's a job. When you're working on the business, you're building system processes that you ultimately can step away from or don't require your constant time and attention. The model that I want people to kind of think about in this is the idea of a food truck or a hot dog stand versus a vending machine. At their core, they both provide food at some level, right? If I have a food truck, it's dependent on me to be doing all the cooking, it's dependent on me to be there and spending my time and presence to make the business work. Whereas if I have a vending machine, right, I stock the machine, I can go away for several days, but still be able to be making money, right? A food truck is a job, a vending machine is a business. And that's the thing, or excuse me, is an asset. And that's the thing that you want to start looking on and thinking about as you're building up what it is you're doing. Also understand that the words and the language you use to describe yourself are going to determine your decisions. I didn't pay much attention to this when I first got started in the entrepreneurial world. But the more that I've done it, the more that I realize that the way you talk and the way you use your language to describe situations, not only is it very telling as to where you're at, but it's also limiting in some regards. If you use limiting language, it's going to keep you small. But you're going to use permissive big language, it's going to help you grow, right? So one example would someone say, I'm trying to start a side hustle, right? Well, anyone can try to start a side hustle, right? Think of like what that really means. With the coaches and the customers, the clients I work with, I actually have gotten to this so much. I have it here on my desk. Master Yoda says, do or do not. There is no try, right? We are no longer going to be trying to get stuff done. We're either going to get stuff done or we're going to focus on working and pivoting to something else. Okay. The thing you need to understand is that your identity drives decisions. So you need to own it. So you're no longer, trying to start a side hustle. You're a business owner who also has a W-2, right? Same description of the same situation, but it's something that is incredibly different in terms of the mindset and positioning and the action-oriented language that the person is using it can then benefit from. The other thing to think about this too is that, ultimately as parents, as business owners, we're doing this for some element of time freedom. Okay. And if all you're doing is just using your time to advance or fulfill within the business, you're ultimately, I don't want to say stealing, but you're not leveraging the time to be most efficient. The more time you can invest into working on the business and building those systems and building out the requirement for not constant presence or attention, ultimately, the more time freedom you're going to have, right? So don't think about, spending a little bit extra time working on the business to make it need you less as, stealing from your family or not being around your kids. Ultimately, it's going to allow you to be more present and have more time available for them. And if, you're like me, if you give a shit about being a good parent, ultimately, that kids want to be around parents who are present and who are stress-free, right? If you're burnt out, if you're constantly tired, that's not giving your kids the best version of yourself. And that's not really why we're doing this. So ultimately, it always goes back to, can I work on the business to improve it to get that time freedom that I'm looking for that's so important to me right now? So hopefully this video is shaped or helped you kind of change up your mindset. Are you an employee? Are you a business owner? I'd love to hear from people in the comments below. Where do you think you're at? Right? Let me know. Are you an employee? Are you a business owner? Are you still trying to figure that piece out? Because ultimately what we can, help you do is change that identity to get to where you want to be, right? It's one thing to understand that your identity, your language might be a little off. Your approach to what you're building needs to be changed, and that's fine. But we would love to be able to help you. So in that regard, if you've gotten any sort of value or education from this video, number one, would love to have you subscribe, like the video, share it, put it on other social channels. If there's other people that you think might be interested in this, or just, continue with it, whatnot. And more importantly, I'd love to have you visit shiftyoursaturdays.com to see some of the events, some of the workshops, some of the different products we have that might help you get started on this process of helping you build assets and reclaim your financial future. Thank you for your time. Thank you for watching the video today, and look forward to seeing you next week, where we're going to be talking about ultimately why we're focused on building income producing assets.